at 4 a.m. So this happened back in 2019. My name's Chris, and honestly, I don't usually share stuff like this online, but this one has haunted me ever since. I keep replaying it in my head, wondering if I was just seeing things or if it was something else entirely. At the time, I was working full-time at a logistics company. It was a pretty boring gig. Long hours, repetitive tasks, just the kind of job that drains you by the end of the week. That Friday night, I had just clocked out a little after 10 p.m. and some coworkers invited me to hang out at a friend's apartment nearby. We were all tired but wanted to unwind. Nothing wild, just a few beers, some casual conversation, trying to forget work. I didn't plan to stay out late. I figured I'd have a beer or two and be home before midnight. But you know how those things go. One beer turned into two turned into three, and by the time I finally checked my phone, it was almost 3:30 in the morning. I wasn't feeling drunk or anything, but definitely a bit fuzzy. I knew I shouldn't drive yet, not in this state. So someone suggested we get coffee or snacks somewhere nearby just to clear our heads before heading home. Most places were closed, but someone mentioned a 7-Eleven just a few blocks away. It was always open, always lit, so we agreed it sounded perfect. We got in the car and drove over. Pulling into the parking lot, I noticed there were more cars than I expected for that time of night. 3 or 4, maybe, just sitting there silently, their windows fogged up. We joked that maybe we weren't the only ones craving a midnight snack or a quick fix of caffeine. The lot was quiet except for the low hum of streetlights and the distant sound of a train passing. Stepping inside, the bright fluorescent lights hit us as usual. The familiar cold air of a convenience store wrapped around us, mixed with that unmistakable smell. A weird combo of coffee, cold metal freezers, and plastic wrappers. It was comforting in a strange way, like a place frozen in time waiting to serve late-night wanderers. There were people inside, which was a bit surprising for the hour. I counted 4 or 5 customers scattered throughout the store, near the hot dog roller, by the drink machines, browsing the chips aisle. But they weren't really doing anything. Not really. They just stood there, completely still. One man was facing the Slurpee machine, staring straight ahead like he was mesmerized by it. Another woman near the candy aisle was clutching an unopened bag of Skittles. Not a single blink, not a shift in posture, just frozen. I looked at one of my friends who met my gaze with the same puzzled, uneasy look. I tried to brush it off. Maybe they were just tired, or maybe we were all a little buzzed and overthinking it. We moved towards the hot food counter. I grabbed a small coffee and a breakfast sandwich. The microwave buzzed as it heated my food. Still, none of the other customers moved. It was like they were statues. Then a voice from behind us made me jump. "Hey, keep your voices down while you're here," said a security guard. He was standing near the door, cigarette half lit and tucked behind his ear. He looked worn out, eyes tired like he hadn't slept in days. But there was something about the way he said it, quiet, almost like a warning, that made us stop. One of my friends laughed nervously. "Why? Are we disturbing the others?" The guard didn't smile. He glanced toward the unmoving customers and lowered his voice. "They don't like loud noises." We exchanged glances, suddenly feeling a bit weird. The guard's tone wasn't joking. Trying to lighten the mood, we started whispering silly jokes about the people looking like NPCs in a game who hadn't loaded right or wax figures stuck on display. But no one laughed. Because the longer we stood there, the more it felt wrong. They didn't move. Not a blink, not a scratch, not a breath. It was like they weren't really there to shop or wait in line. They were just standing. I kept staring at the man by the Slurpee machine. He wore this old beige coat, the kind you'd find in a thrift shop. It looked dusty, worn out. The collar was stained dark and his hair was combed back stiffly, like it was glued in place. And the woman in the candy aisle, her eyes were wide open, unnaturally so, like she was staring right through the shelves beyond them at something no one else could see. Her lips moved slightly, almost like she was whispering a name. We sat down at a small table by the window to drink our coffee, still whispering, trying to shake off the growing unease. Then I noticed something else. None of them had anything from the store. The man by the Slurpee, he never poured one. He just stood there. One guy was holding a fast food bag from someplace I didn't recognize. The logo looked faded, like a company that no longer existed. His cup was plain white styrofoam with no label or writing. The woman with the Skittles, she didn't even open the bag. And another woman had a half-eaten sandwich. But the bread was this unnatural shade of green, not moldy or old, but something else, like it had been dyed or corrupted somehow. Suddenly, without warning, they vanished. Just like that, no doors opening, no footsteps, no sound. One moment they were there. The next, the aisles were empty. We stood frozen, eyes darting around, waiting to hear something. The bell on the door, a whisper, footsteps, nothing. And then I noticed something else. The cashier. There was no one at the register. It had been unmanned the entire time. We hadn't seen anyone working. The security guard came up to us again. "You saw them too," he said quietly. We nodded, still unsure what to say. He leaned closer. "They show up every few nights. Not always the same ones, but always after 2:45 a.m. What are they?" one of my friends asked, voice trembling. The guard looked down, shuffling his feet like he'd been wrestling with the answer for years. "We don't know," he muttered. "They don't touch anything. Don't speak. Just stand there. We keep the lights on and let them be." "Why not close the store?" I asked. "Corporate doesn't believe it. Told me to stop making stories as just people loitering, but I've worked here 6 years. Seen enough to know they ain't people." He took his cigarette from behind his ear and lit it. 2 years ago, he said, a guy walked in drunk, loud, started yelling about how creepy everyone was acting. We waited, our hearts pounding. He collapsed near the fridge aisle. No one ever found out why. No illness, no drugs, no reason. But his eyes were wide open, like he saw something before he hit the ground. He flicked the ash. We don't shout anymore. We don't ask questions. We just let them do whatever they do, and eventually they vanish. We left without saying a word. Outside, I glanced back through the glass. The man in the beige coat was there again, standing by the Slurpee machine, looking right at the door. This time, he was smiling. It's been 5 years since then. I haven't stepped into a 7-Eleven past midnight since. Not for water, not for gas, not for anything. I've looked online trying to find stories like mine, but there's nothing. Maybe people don't talk about it, maybe they don't see. But I know what I saw. If you ever find yourself in a 7-Eleven at 3 a.m., pay attention. If there are too many people, but the store feels too quiet. If their food doesn't match what's on the shelves, if they don't blink, just leave and don't look back, because if they notice you noticing, they might not vanish next time. Bad decision. My name is Nathan. I got a job at a 7-Eleven in a small town nestled somewhere near a bigger city in California. Not quite the fast lane, but not the backwoods either. Just enough to feel like civilization without being smothered by it. To me, it was the perfect balance. A soft reboot after a string of disappointments, career-wise, romantically, and with a family that just never quite understood me. Here, I had my own place, my own pace, and the quiet luxury of being left alone. It was, in its own way, freedom. And for a while, that was enough. That changed when I met Jody. She walked into the store like she had a built-in spotlight. Not the glamorous kind, but the natural kind. She was always smiling, always laughing. Joyful in a way that didn't seem fake, just carefree. It was refreshing. I didn't realize how long it had been since someone like that came into my life. Light, not weighing anything down. We hit it off fast. I've never had trouble talking to women, not really. And Jody seemed to appreciate my dry humor and deadpan stories about the people who wandered in during the graveyard shift. One dinner turned into several, and before long we were official. No wedding bells or big declarations. Just a quiet agreement to do life together. She moved in after a few months, and it felt right. Like maybe this time I'd found something that could last. We weren't flashy. We weren't chasing dreams or vacations. Just a couple with 4 Shih Tzus, 2 we bought, 2 accidental puppies. Our lives revolved around those dogs. They were our joy, our responsibility, our reason not to travel or go out too much. They were also unknowingly part of the start of our unraveling. Jody stopped working. At first it was to help raise the dogs. Then it became, I'm figuring out what I want to do next. And eventually it just became nothing. She talked about going abroad, about how she deserved more than a regular job, how the world was too small for her where we were. Meanwhile, I picked up remote work in addition to my hours at 7-Eleven just to keep up with rent, utilities, dog food, and groceries. I didn't mind being the provider until she made it feel like that still wasn't enough. She began to complain about the apartment, about the dogs, about me. If something went wrong, it was automatically my fault. If I vented about work, I was being negative. If she didn't like someone but they disagreed with me, she'd suddenly be on their side. I became the villain in every scenario. It was like living in a courtroom where the verdict had already been decided before I even got a chance to speak. And then there was the plug. Just one socket in the living room, but it had been sparking since the rain started a few weeks ago. I asked her to call maintenance about it. I didn't have the time, I was barely sleeping. I'd come home from the store, clock in for remote work, and crash somewhere around 3 a.m. She always said she'd do it tomorrow. Then it would rain again, and that faint smoke smell would return. The plug would buzz. Still nothing. She would cook, but only when she felt like it. She loved experimenting with recipes, but never saved leftovers. Food would spoil on the stove. She rarely cleaned unless it was on her terms. If I asked, no, suggested, anything, it became a full-blown argument. She'd scream like I accused her of being lazy in front of an audience I couldn't even see. Sometimes old coworkers, the ones she used to trash talk when we both worked at 7-Eleven, would come over. Now she laughed with them, shared drinks and stories, made me feel like an outsider in my own apartment. They'd leave the place a mess. She'd promise to clean up. But if I tried to help, she'd say I was rushing her, making her feel less than. I felt invisible. One night, after another fight over something stupid, dirty dishes I needed to use, she shouted, "You think you're some kind of hero? You're not. You're nothing. Just a man stuck in a loop and you'll never get out." And maybe she was right. I was stuck. But the real loop wasn't work or rent. It was being blamed for everything, living with someone who only saw the worst in me. Someone I once loved who now looked at me like a burden. That was when the idea first took root. I didn't plan it like some kind of revenge. I'm not that kind of person. I was just tired, exhausted in ways that sleep couldn't fix. And I kept thinking about that plug, how she knew it was broken, how she laughed about it, how she said, "It's not like the place will burn down." But what if it did? The next time her friends came over, I didn't unplug anything. I didn't check the socket. I just let it be. I told myself if it happened, it was fate. If it didn't, then maybe I was being dramatic. That night, it rained harder than it had in weeks. I remember sitting outside in the hallway, smoking a cigarette I didn't want. The sky lit up like a war zone. I waited, maybe for the smell of smoke, maybe for guilt. Then I heard it, screaming. Not just hers, the others too. A chorus of panic from inside our apartment. And the fire? It moved fast, faster than I thought it would. I saw Jody at the window, banging, crying out for help. I could have run, I could have tried, but I didn't. I just stood there, watching. She knew about the plug. They all did. I asked, I begged, and they laughed it off. So I just stood there, frozen, waiting for the sound to stop. The dogs were with me. I'd taken them out earlier that evening, fed them, bundled them up in the car. I couldn't leave them behind. I wouldn't. They didn't deserve any of it. They were safe. They said it was electrical failure, an accident. No one suspected otherwise. I played the grieving boyfriend well enough, said I'd stepped out to run an errand, that I came home to the flames. I even cried in front of the cops. No one questioned it, but the thing that scared me most, I didn't feel guilt. I felt peace. After the funeral, people came by, they offered sympathy, hugs, I took them all, said things like, "It's hard without her, and she was everything to me." I wasn't lying, she was everything. And then, slowly, she became too much. There are lessons to be learned here about depression, about burnout, about silence. Sometimes people don't snap like in the movies. Sometimes they just erode, bit by bit. You stop sleeping, you stop hoping, you stop trying to fix things. You feel invisible for so long that you begin to believe you're a ghost in your own life. If anyone asks, I'll say it was an accident, and maybe it was. But deep down, I know the truth. I know what I allowed to happen, what I wanted to happen. I don't tell this story for pity or praise. I don't want redemption. I want to warn you. People talk about mental health like it's just sadness, but real darkness, the kind that creeps in quietly, the kind that whispers while you smile through the day, That can turn even a quiet man into something else entirely. And for me, this is the only bad decision I made, despite all Jody's bad decisions over the course of us being together. I swallowed it all in silence. I never complained. Or maybe not just that. The first bad decision was to let her into my life. And her first was, she did. She came into my life, and now she's gone. Buddy. You can just call me Anna. I was assigned to work in California, not in a big city like LA or San Francisco, but in a smaller, quieter town where things tend to move slower. At least that's what I thought. Before being transferred, I used to work at 7-Eleven back in my hometown. I've never really considered myself brave. I don't see ghosts or shadows or anything like that, but I definitely feel things. Sometimes I step into a place and the air just shifts. It gets heavy. It's like there's an invisible pair of eyes watching you from across the room. I get full-body chills, and my heart starts pounding like it's about to burst from my head. That's exactly what happened the first time I ever walked into that particular 7-Eleven. I wasn't working there yet, just dropping off my resume, but the moment I stepped through the doors, I felt that sensation in my gut. Something was off. I didn't linger. I left as soon as I could. Later, they called me in for an interview. I got the job, trained for a few days, and officially became part of the crew. During training, everything felt normal, routine. But the moment I became full-time staff, that's when the strange stuff started happening. One early morning, I got to the store before anyone else. I'd brought a small electric pan and made myself pancakes in the back room, just a quiet little breakfast to start the day. I left the plate sitting on the edge of my desk and went out to the floor to check on our coffee machine and cold storage. That day, I was covering cleaning duties since our usual janitor was out. One of the guys, a coworker from night shift, came by briefly to pick up some leftover coffee from the cooler that we'd promised to save for him. Aside from that quick visit, I was alone. When I came back into the office to eat, the plate was gone. I froze for a second, confused. I was sure I had left it right there. I checked the floor, the trash, behind the monitor. Nothing. I even looked inside the drawer, thinking maybe I absent-mindedly moved it. Still nothing. Later, our store supervisor suspected the coworker had taken the plate. She told me it wouldn't be the first time he'd grabbed food that didn't belong to him. But I had a weird feeling. It didn't make sense. Then, after another search, I found the plate under my desk. No fork, no pancake, just the empty plate. I brushed it off. Maybe I'd forgotten I moved it. I made another pancake and finished breakfast. But I told our general manager about it when she came in that afternoon. I explained what happened and asked if I should be charged for the missing fork and plate, just in case. That's when she got quiet. She looked around like someone might be listening and pulled me aside. "That's probably just Buddy," she whispered. I stared at her. "Who's Buddy?" I asked. She gave a small laugh, not because it was funny, but because she knew how it would sound. "That's what we call the spirit in the store," she said. "It's been around for years, doesn't hurt anyone, just plays tricks." I wanted to believe she was joking, but something in her expression told me she wasn't. Over the next few weeks, I started hearing more about Buddy, stories from coworkers. Napkins that folded themselves, pens that rolled across the counter by themselves, watches that went missing only to show up in bizarre places like the mop bucket or above the walk-in cooler. Everyone just blamed it on Buddy. It was like the store's running joke, except nobody ever really laughed when it was happening to them. 4 days after the pancake incident, I was sitting at my desk, sorting invoices. I wasn't thinking about it anymore until I felt something tap my foot under the desk. Not like I nudged something. It felt like a finger. A gentle poke. I looked down, and there it was. My plate, my fork, and the pancake. A little soggy and cold, but completely untouched, sitting neatly on top like it had never been missing. I swear, I didn't know whether to scream or say thank you. I told the others, and we all ended up laughing about it. One of the girls even said, "See? Buddy's just messing with you." After that, little things kept happening. A pack of receipts would disappear and then show up on the freezer door handle. My name tag vanished one night and appeared in the bathroom soap tray. It became routine. A little creepy, sure, but never dangerous. That said, not everything strange came from the supernatural. Around that time, a coworker I'd grown close to, someone I really trusted, borrowed $120 from me. He said he needed it for an urgent repair on his car. I didn't think twice about helping him out. But then, just like that, he stopped showing up. No texts, no calls. When I asked around, people just shrugged. He does that sometimes, they said. He never paid me back. I couldn't help but compare it in my head. Here was a ghost, Buddy, who would take my stuff but always bring it back. And then there was this real living person who just vanished without a trace or a word of apology. Eventually, I transferred out of that store and moved to another job in the area. But I still think about that place, not because of the job or the coworkers or even the guy who ghosted me after borrowing money. It's because of Buddy. There's something about those weird little experiences that sticks with you. You don't forget the feeling of your foot being tapped under the desk or finding your pancakes days later, cold but perfectly intact. It makes you wonder about what we don't see, what we don't understand, and how sometimes the scariest things aren't the ghosts, it's the people. Funny thing is, Buddy, the one you should be afraid of, was the most reliable out of everyone. So yeah, I'll never forget that time in California. I may have started off afraid, but in the strangest, most unexpected way, I made a buddy for life.